docks of Lake Superior rests the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, once the largest ship to sail the Great Lakes, and a symbol of strength, industry, and human ambition. She was a vessel of record-breaking scale, designed to carry millions of tons of iron ore through the inland seas that powered a nation. But on a stormy November night in 1975, the pride of the American side was claimed by the waters she once ruled. What brought down this mighty ship? Join us as we dive into the legacy of the Edmund Fitzgerald. June 1958. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald was launched at the Great Lakes Engineering Works in River Rouge, Michigan. At 729 feet long and 75 feet wide, she was the biggest ship ever built for the Great Lakes, a behemoth nicknamed the Big Fitz. Owned by Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and operated by the Columbia Transportation Division, she was designed to haul taconite iron ore from mines in Minnesota to steel mills across the Midwest. Year after year, she broke cargo records, once carrying over 27,000 tons of ore in a single trip. Crews admired her size, her speed, and her clean lines. For nearly 2 decades, she was both a workhorse and a legend of the lakes. The Edmund Fitzgerald made multiple voyages almost every year between the iron ore mines in Minnesota and the steel mills in the Midwest, especially in Michigan and Ohio. Her routes followed a long and demanding path through the Great Lakes. She started on Lake Superior, passed through the connecting channels into Lake Huron, continued along its open waters, then moved into Lake Erie, and finally navigated the Detroit River to reach her destination in Detroit and other Midwest ports. The journey often covered more than 600 miles, requiring careful navigation through narrow straits, shifting currents, and unpredictable weather along the way. Under normal conditions, a single trip from Superior to Detroit would take about 2 to 3 days, depending on the weather and the ship's load. The Edmund Fitzgerald was known for her speed and efficiency, and was one of the fastest ships in her class, making her ideal for the tight schedules of the steel industry. Yet sailing the Great Lakes was never without danger. Superior in particular was known for its sudden storms, waves that could rival the oceans, winds that could roar like hurricanes, and icy conditions that could overwhelm even the strongest ships. Mariners called November the Witch of the Lakes, the month when storms were fiercest. It was in this season that the Edmund Fitzgerald made her final fateful voyage. She was under the command of Captain Ernest McSorley, a seasoned mariner nearing retirement. Captain Ernest M. McSorley was 63 years old when he took command of the Edmund Fitzgerald on her final voyage. Born in Ontario, Canada, McSorley had spent more than 4 decades sailing the Great Lakes. He was known as a steady, disciplined mariner, respected by his crew and admired by his peers. Quiet and professional, he had a reputation for being cautious in bad weather. The Edmund Fitzgerald was one of the finest ships on the lakes, and McSorley hoped she would be his last command before stepping ashore for good. On November 9, 1975, she departed Superior, Wisconsin, loaded with more than 26,000 tons of iron ore pellets bound for Detroit. As she steamed across Lake Superior, the weather deteriorated rapidly. By the early hours of November 10th, the ship was battling 30-foot waves, hurricane-force gusts, and blinding snow. McSorley reported difficulties. The vessel had lost radar, forcing her to navigate in near-total blindness. The Arthur M. Anderson, another freighter following behind, acted as her guide through the storm. By the afternoon, the situation grew worse. Hatch covers were reported damaged, and water was likely entering the holds. At 7:10 p.m., Captain McSorley's final words crackled over the radio.
"We are holding our own."
Less than 10 minutes later, the Edmund Fitzgerald vanished from the Anderson's radar screen. No distress call was ever sent. The Edmund Fitzgerald had disappeared. All 29 men on board were lost. Not a single body was ever recovered. In the days that followed, the Coast Guard searched the stormy lake. They found lifeboats shattered into pieces, life rings drifting among the waves, and debris scattered across the surface. Theories swirled. Among the many theories of what doomed the Edmund Fitzgerald, one of the most haunting is that of the Three Sisters waves, a deadly phenomenon well known to Great Lakes sailors. These rogue waves do not come singly, but in a sudden, merciless sequence. Three towering walls of water, each larger than the last, striking a vessel before it can recover from the previous blow. Others suspected water had rushed through faulty hatch covers, flooding her holds until she could no longer stay afloat. A third theory suggested she may have run aground on a hidden shoal, tearing open her hull. The sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald sparked one of the most intense maritime investigations in Great Lakes history. With no distress call, no survivors, and the ship lost in deep, stormy waters, officials were left with fragments of evidence and unanswered questions. The U.S. Coast Guard and the National Transportation Safety Board both ultimately concluded that the Edmund Fitzgerald most likely succumbed to flooding through her hatch covers. According to this theory, the heavy seas on November 10th battered the ship's 21 cargo hatches, loosening clamps and letting tons of water pour into her holds. As the weight increased, she rode lower in the water until a final surge dragged her under. The reports cited poor maintenance and design weaknesses in the hatch system as contributing factors. However, not everyone agreed. Later, independent investigators and diving expeditions suggested other possibilities, from sudden structural failure of the hull to the overwhelming force of rogue waves. The debate was further complicated by the discovery of the wreck 17 miles north-northwest of Whitefish Point in May 1976. Sonar and submersibles revealed that the Edmund Fitzgerald lay in two main pieces on the lake bed. Her bow upright and intact, her stern twisted and inverted about 170 feet away. This separation fueled theories of structural failure. Yet divers also noted the relatively intact hatch covers, which cast doubt on the Coast Guard's flooding explanation. Over the years, multiple expeditions revisited the wreck, each offering new details, but no definitive answer. In the 1980s, Canadian and American teams conducted dives that documented the ship's condition in detail. In the mid-2000s, the Ontario government formally prohibited further diving on the wreck under the Ontario Heritage Act, recognizing it as a grave site for the 29 men lost. To this day, no single cause has ever been proven beyond dispute. Some blame faulty hatch covers, others a broken keel, and still others the overwhelming force of Superior's rogue waves. The official record remains divided, a reminder that nature does not always surrender her secrets. What is certain is that the loss of the Edmund Fitzgerald transformed Great Lakes shipping. The disaster led to stricter safety regulations, stronger hatch standards, mandatory survival suits for crews, better storm forecasting, and more rigorous inspections. Lessons written in tragedy became rules of survival for those who continue to sail the inland seas. The ship herself is now a grave. The wreck lies under the cold, dark waters of Lake Superior, preserved by the lake's icy stillness. In 1995, a team of divers recovered her bell, the most iconic symbol of the vessel, and replaced it with a replica engraved with the names of all 29 men who went down with her. The original bell now rests in the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum at Whitefish Point, where families and visitors can honor those who were lost. The story of the Edmund Fitzgerald lives on not only in records and investigations, but in culture and memory. Gordon Lightfoot's haunting ballad, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, carried the story across the world, turning the ship into legend. For many, the song gave voice to the grief of families and the mystery of the sinking. Today, the Edmund Fitzgerald is more than a shipwreck. She is a cautionary tale, a symbol of the Great Lakes' unforgiving power, and a memorial to the lives lost on that November night. Lake Superior, vast and unrelenting, claimed the pride of the American side in just moments, and with her, 29 souls whose families still remember them. Beneath the waves, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald endures, her steel twisted, her story unfinished, her name forever etched into the history of the Great Lakes. The deep is full of secrets waiting to be discovered. Subscribe and journey with us again into the tragedies and mysteries that time has left behind.